This is Professor Ludlum again. This is your summary for Chapter 3. Here we're talking about the nuts and bolts of really settling a dispute that you have with the international business transaction. And again, give you a few travel picks. On the left, this is one of the walk-around restaurants I visited in China, in Tianjin. They serve scorpions on a stick. They're grilled, and I was told they taste very good. But of course, don't be too judgmental. On the right, there's a advertisement in China for Burger King, and I'm not sure if when I eat at Burger King, if I'm not eating exactly the same thing as the fried scorpions. But at least culturally, we perceive it as a lot different. Now, what are we going to do when we have a dispute between a business in America and a business in another country? We have options. And first and foremost is mediation, basically working together, talking it out. But of course, if that doesn't work, then you can go to the next stage, which is arbitration. Arbitration is again where you agree to talk it out with the other side, but you have an arbitrator, a neutral third party who's there to kind of act like a referee. Not necessarily to make a decision, but certainly to keep everybody playing fair and talking about the points and keep the process moving along, as opposed to just letting them fight and yell at each other. Oftentimes you have these kind of agreements where you make contracts. Rather than going to court, you may want to choose arbitration. And so you'll put that in the words of your contract, that if there's a dispute between my firm in America and the company we're selling to in Brazil, instead of going to either America's courts or Brazil's courts, we'll instead go to arbitration, and we'll agree that it'll have to be an internationally approved arbitrator and that we'll select them later, but we'll do that as opposed to go to court. Why? Well, honestly, the American company may not feel that they're getting a fair shake when they go to court in Brazil, the same way the Brazilian company may not feel they get a fair opportunity to be heard when they come to America. As a result, you want that neutral third party, that arbiter, to be able to make a decision when you have a dispute that you can't resolve between the two of you. Litigation is your other option. If you can't work it out, or if you haven't agreed to, in your contract, to have arbitration, your choice is either we sue the Brazilian company in America and all the difficulties of making that work, or we go to Brazil and sue the Brazilian company and all the difficulties we have with that, making it work. The book details all the different steps of process that you have to go through about jurisdiction. But again, a lot of these are Western concepts that may or may not be identical to the concept you're facing in a foreign court. So you've got to ask yourself, how practical is it to really go to a foreign court and litigate? Most lawyers are worried about even going to a different state in the United States and litigating without knowing the judges and the local populace who are going to be the jurors and all those kinds of things. Certainly going to another country to litigate a case is all the more worrisome. And that is why so many contracts now automatically put in those arbitration clauses. Now, where are these clauses? You've probably agreed to arbitration 1,000 times and never known it. Most of those times when you see a online business that says, click here to agree to our terms and conditions, I would be certain that almost all of those will have a clause in there that talks about we will do arbitration instead of litigation. You've done it 1,000 times. You just never paid attention to it. One concept that pops up often in this that people get confused, and again, a lot of these concepts are repeat of 3113 concepts, but these two always get confused: forum shopping and forum selection. Again, because they involve the same root of forum. What are we talking about? Forum shopping is basically you're selecting where to sue somebody. Like in the example I had before of the American company doing business with the Brazilian firm, we've got a choice of forum shopping of we can sue them in America or we can sue them in Brazil. Which one do we think will get a better result? That's forum shopping. Forum selection clauses are a clause in the contract that says if we decide to litigate, we promise between our parties that the only place we will go to litigate it is the courts of America or the courts of Brazil, whichever one both parties will agree to. Now, oftentimes this is one of the big sticking points because each party only wants the forum selection clause to choose their location. And that's why most of them end up in choosing arbitration so that nobody thinks that they got, no other way to describe it, they got hometowned. They got cheated because they're the outsider suing the local person. And so forum selection clauses usually are a conflict between the parties. But again, selection clauses are the clause in the contract deciding where you're going to sue. Forum shopping is you haven't put a clause in the contract and now you're deciding, you are selecting or shopping around for the best or the best possible outcome by choosing a different forum. I think the underlying theme of all these ideas is that you've got to be cynical. In other words, you've got to say some of these contracts are going to fail. We're going to have disputes with the other parties. What is going to be the easiest and most effective way of resolving these disputes? Is it going to be arbitration? Is it going to be litigation? If it's going to be litigation, where should we decide to litigate? And then it's getting the other side to agree to those terms. Because it's a big, confusing world. There are going to be problems, and you've got to have some neutral way of deciding them that everyone agrees to. It's complicated, and nothing works out perfectly. But that's the system that we have in international trade.